South Africa's economic freedom ranking is improving ever so slightly. The country is now ranked 90th out of 162 countries. Last year, South Africa was at number 101. The Economic Freedom of the World 2020 annual report was released on Thursday by the Free Market Foundation in partnership with Canada's Fraser Institute. Well, to tell us all about it, I'm joined by the Foundation's Executive Director, Louw. Mr. Louw, good morning and thank you very much for your time. I must confess, I've never heard of this index, the Economic Freedom Index. Before we get into the results of the latest one, where we're seeing South Africa moving slightly up from last year's position to a better position this year, just share with our viewers, what is this index all about? What does it measure?
Yes, you know, people have always got opinions on what the economic system is in a particular country. They say America's capitalist or Sweden is socialist or Venezuela's communist or whatever, but this has always just been an opinion. And then in the 1980s, various experts, economists and jurists got together and came up with an index that uses 42 independent variables published by different organizations, World Economic Forum, World Bank, IMF, Freedom House, and so on, a country risk guide, and put them all together in a composite mix that gives you the economic system of a country objectively. In other words, you can say whether the economic system is economically free, the freest economy at the moment in the world is Hong Kong, or whether it's economically unfree, and you can rank countries according to where they are. This is very important, by the way. You say you haven't heard of it. Yes, of course, most people haven't, because it's very scholarly and very dense and full of enormous quantities of data. But what it is the most cited source in the world on economic systems. And what's important about it is that if you are higher on the index, that is, if you have more economic freedom, or if you are moving up the index, like say China is, if you have less but you're becoming more free, then you have high growth rates and high living standards, and people have longer life expectancies and better literacy and lower crime. Everything is better if countries have a freer economy. And in South Africa, we started off under apartheid getting less and less free till we're one of the least free countries in the world. Then in '94, we started becoming more and more free. We had investment and job creation and things got better. And then about 10 or 15 years ago, we started dropping down the index. And that's when our economy stagnated and we got these fantastically high unemployment rates and things got a lot worse, including inequality, for example. You know, one of the interesting things is that freer economies, not only do they have more equality, in other words, the difference between the rich and the poor is smaller, but the income of the poorest 10%, for instance, in the freest economies is higher than the income of the richest 10% in the least free economies. So if South Africa wants to prosper, it's very simple what we have to do. We have to move up the index and become more economically free. And we've done that very slightly for the first time in about 10 years.
Yeah, Mr. Louw, that was a very comprehensive answer. I just wanted to know how is this index put together, and you've explained it very comprehensive. Now, is it good that South Africa has improved by 11 positions from 90 last year to from 101 last year to 90 in the latest report?
Yes, it's very good indeed. It's quite complicated. In other words, to understand why in the 42 measures used they are giving a better score is quite difficult, because most people think in South Africa the size and role and interference of the state has got more. So it's quite interesting that according to these indices, these data, we've actually become more free. In these 42 criteria are divided into 5 categories. In 4 of them, we've had a slightly better score and 1 a slightly worse score. And that is very good news indeed. And if the government wants South Africa to recover from the COVID catastrophe, from years and years of economic stagnation, it should put its foot flat on the accelerator, free up the economy, the way the Treasury and Minister Moyane have recommended. Those recommendations should be simply implemented. We suspect that they look at the index and they want us to have a better score in order to become more prosperous.
What are these areas, if you don't mind sharing with our viewers, where South Africa, the key areas where there's been good movement in the past year, and hopefully, as you said, that will be maintained and others will be improved beyond COVID-19?
Yes, the 5 areas that these 42 categories or criteria are divided into are, firstly, the size of government. That's simply how big the government is, and that's measured in things like the number of people the government employs compared to the people in the private sector. The government taxation as a proportion of total economic activity. In other words, how big is the government? We've improved there from 5.77 to 6.11, where 10 would be completely free. In other words, it would mean zero government, and 0 would mean everything's owned by the government. So if you become a higher score, then the government is becoming smaller, which is a good, compared to the economy, which is a very good thing. The second category is the legal system, and that has to be stable, it has to be independent, trustworthy, impartial, consistent, and protect property. And our score fell, unfortunately, to about 5, which is halfway down from 10 to 0, and has now improved this year to 5.68. And I want to point out there that the courts frequently and regularly find against the government, which many people interpret as a bad thing, but it's actually something we should celebrate, that our courts can do that and are willing to do it is a very good sign indeed.
Briefly, what are the other last 3, very briefly? We're running out of time, sorry, Mr. Louw.
Okay,
You've mentioned the size of government, legal system and property rights. What are the other 3?
The next 3 are sound money, that there must be stable money and low inflation. Then there's freedom to trade internationally. The goods, people and money free to cross borders. We would have to get rid of exchange control there. That's one where that's the only one where we've declined. And then freedom from regulation, red tape, ease of going into business, ease of conducting business, especially for small business. We've gone up very slightly there from 7.2 to 7.24.
Mr. Louw from the Free Market Foundation, thank you very much. South Africa improving nicely from last year to this year.